The Gas Imaginary is an artistic research project, and it cuts across different media: poetry, installation, diagrams. It also might be a film project, and it's exploring the forms and norms of unconventional extraction, but specifically of fracking as it rolls out internally to the indebted states of the West. So I started research on this project between 2010 and 2012 when I was travelling to and from Brisbane and Gladstone while the construction for the industry was being rolled out. My father was quite ill and the harbour was being dredged not so long after that. And I was thinking through the difference between the modernist imagination of mining and what was happening with the rollout of fracking and the images of labour and nature that the industry was quite dependent upon in order to be installed into the social fabric. Gladstone is not a mine city, but you can think about it as a mine city insofar as it's quite dependent on the booms and busts of the mining economy, but it doesn't have that proximity to the mine or necessarily to the mine's effects that you would have by living in a mining town. That all gets slightly disrupted with the impact of the dredging of the Gladstone Harbour. So the first series is called The Gas Imaginary, and it really sets up across those 9 images a kind of narrative sequence that thinks through the difference between the modernist mine and its images that kind of mobilised it as an ongoing political imagination, and the unconventional mine, which generated an unconventional politics as well, and which is, rather than being so vertical as the mine that we think about when we think about coal mining, for example, the unconventional mine of fracking is a horizontal project, and it really sets up quite a different relationship between citizenship, land and water resources. There is an aesthetic continuity in the way that the diagrams are set up. They're really kind of meant to mime or mimic the engineering diagrams that the industry uses to roll itself out. And with the layers of drawing and commentary that I'm adding to that, you'll see historical notes and quotes and different kinds of figures that play out different kinds of positions in relationship to the mine contract. I was particularly interested in the image of the mine worker as a kind of dignified image of labour that really was quite key in the rollout of the industry itself. So in part of the first series and the second series, you do get these kinds of comments and jokes and kind of shaky destabilisations of the value of the mine job to a larger kind of social field. In the first series, I'm really interested in deconstructing or thinking about divestment as part of the process of the material effects or the experience of the mining contract. So it's really focused on the settler whose land and relationship to land is suddenly problematized by the relationship to the mine that kind of invades their property relationships. With install, what's interesting is in the space of settler colonialism, we do get a situation where people who have been formerly not exposed to the most devastating effects of this kind of industry are suddenly and dramatically exposed also where they live with the rollout of the industry into previously urban and rural spaces. So I was thinking about the continuity of this kind of industry with prior forms of colonialism and trying to make those connections also by talking to the Gooreng people of the city where I grew up and thinking through the techniques of the industry, which are quite similar in terms of legal innovation to how land use changes with colonialism throughout centuries. So the first series was actually produced in the Netherlands while I was on a residency at a place called the unconventional Academy. The second series is really an opportunity to come back to the city that inspired it, and that was part of me thinking through the fly-in, fly-out labour of the mining industry and its relationship to my own experience of flying in and flying out of Gladstone as an arts worker during this period. In the second series, I'm much more taking up a lot of the stories and positions and non-human impacts of the mine, insofar as a lot of these positions and responses to the industry were not being considered purposely through the rollout of the industry, and putting them together in a composite series of narratives is adding up to a documentation process that would not otherwise take shape. In doing that, I'm interested in documenting non-dominant and underdocumented arguments and experiences of the rollout of fracking that have only recently come to light through various kinds of legal inquiries.